want you to notice here that David says he restores my soul and he leads me. Somebody say leads me. David said he leads me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. So for the person who's listening to me, I want you to understand that point number one is that a restoration requires revelation. But see, the point number two, the point that I want you to get after this word today is that restoration results in redirection. Y'all, I'm getting excited right here. I want you to understand that, listen, man, not only must you understand where you are and allow our God, our Alpha and Omega, to restore your life, but I want you to also understand that restoration actually results in, listen to me, redirection. Notice what David says. He says, man, like after he restores him, God doesn't just leave him restored. He begins to lead him to the path of righteousness. Y'all not talking back to me. The reason why this is important for somebody to understand is because I want you to know that God doesn't restore you just to leave you. God doesn't just restore your life just so that you can go back to the same things all over again. Because what sense would it make for a car to be restored only to go right back into the ditch that it came from? What sense would it make for God to restore your mind only for you to have 7 more demons to come back and make you go crazy? What sense would it make for God to restore your health and restore your smile and restore your joy and restore your relationships only for you to go back to where you was before? So God, listen to this, he doesn't restore us just to leave us. And this is why restoration, listen to this, results in redirection. Family, I think this is something that everyone here has to understand, because here is the point, man, that I'm really trying to bring home. This is the point that I think this text is really bringing out for every single believer who needs to be restored under the sound of my voice. I need somebody to hear me that you cannot be restored while you're still holding the hands of your dysfunction. You can't walk in peace while you're still running back into chaos. In other words, what God has to do is, man, like he has to restore you and bring you back to the original design. But what God has to do is he has to redirect you so that you can go towards the path of righteousness. And the reason why he brings you toward the path of righteousness is because as you're walking, as I'm walking, as David is walking on the path of righteousness, what he realizes is as he's walking on the path of righteousness that he begins to be right. In other words, as he's walking on the path of righteousness, his life begins to look good. As he's walking on the path of righteousness, he doesn't go backwards. He doesn't go back to his old habits and his old thought process and his old environment. He doesn't go back to his old struggles. Nope. As he's walking on the path of righteousness, his life becomes right. And family, please, I don't want you to miss what I'm saying right here, because some of you, man, like you're listening to what I'm saying right now, and you're saying, well, the way that God walks you on the path of righteousness is that God begins to give you rules to follow. In other words, God turns this relational aspect into a rule aspect where now you have to follow a certain amount of rules in order for your life to be right. No, please, guys. I don't want you to miss what I'm saying right now. Righteousness, in the sense of what David is talking about, has nothing to do with rules, but it has everything to do with relationship. In other words, I'm not here saying that rules are bad. I am not here saying that rules are horrible, but I need you to pay attention to the text. He says, he leads me, listen to this, in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. My God. In other words, righteousness results in redirection, but please don't miss the caveat here. It is for his name's Oh my God, my God. Okay. Let me break this thing down, man. Let me say it this way because I want somebody to understand what I'm saying, man. I remember like one of the cars, man, that I love. I don't own this, but one of the cars that I love so much is the Rolls-Royce. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Rolls-Royce. I love Rolls-Royces, man, because like Rolls-Royces, man, that like you don't even find commercials for Rolls-Royces. They're actually sold in air shows. Come on, somebody. Like Rolls-Royces, like they're on a whole different tier. And I remember like it was yesterday, there was this particular story that I heard about this Rolls-Royce owner. And this particular Rolls-Royce owner decided that he wanted to drive across the country of Europe. But while he was driving across Europe, his car actually broke down. This owner, realizing that his car broke down, did what any one of us would do. He called for help. Now you and I, we'd call probably for AAA. We'd probably call for roadside assistance. But this particular owner, because he owned a Rolls-Royce, he called the manufacturer. And when he called the Rolls-Royce dealer and the manufacturer, what they did is listen to this. They flew in a technician so that the technician could handle the situation. In other words, the technician went on a private plane, last minute call in order to go in and fix the Rolls-Royce. The man got super happy, jumped in his Rolls-Royce and continued on his way. But see, the problem is about 3 weeks later, the man realized that his bill never came. About 3 weeks later, he realized that he was never given an invoice for the work that was done on his Rolls-Royce. So being a good Christian, the man decided that he's going to call Rolls-Royce so that he can get his account taken care of. And when he called them and asked them for the invoice, the salesperson was stunned. They were perplexed. They were confused. And what the salesperson said is something that is etched in my mind, and it's something that I want you to understand that it's going to be etched in your mind. He said, the salesperson said to the individual that was inquiring about the invoice, he said, "Sir, we have no record of any," somebody say any. "We have no record of any Rolls-Royces ever breaking down." Okay. Come here. I'm talking to you right now. The reason why he said they have no record of a Rolls-Royce breaking down is because he wasn't just giving a service, but he was protecting the brand. In other words, the reason why he said that is so that there could be a standard that Rolls-Royces don't break down. It was not the fact, I understand that a Rolls-Royce is a car, that it runs on 4 wheels, that it has an engine, and it has a steering wheel. I get that Rolls-Royces have some of the same components as almost every other vehicle. But see, the difference here was that this person wanted the man to understand that Rolls-Royces, listen to this, they don't break down simply because of the name that's on it. Jesus. In other words, because the name Rolls-Royce was on the car, the man was given certain perks. Because the name Rolls-Royce was on the car, he wanted him to understand that it does not break down. And if by chance it would break down, Rolls-Royce would fix it without anyone understanding what happened, without anyone knowing that it broke down, simply because its name was on there. Family, here is the reason why I believe this story actually is attributed to our journey in this Christian walk on today, is because I want somebody to hear me. God's name is on you too. Okay. I want somebody to understand that because God's name is on you, God is going to restore you. Because God's name is on you, He wants to lead you on the path of righteousness. Because God's name is on you, He doesn't want you to go back and be dirty. No, He wants you to live your life of destiny. In other words, because God's name is on you, he's going to do whatever he needs to do so that whenever folk look at you and they look at your smile in the midst of chaos and they're looking at your situation, that whenever people look at you, they're not just going to say, man, there's something different about this brother or there's something different about this sister. No, their testimony is going to be that God did it. In other words, listen to this. David says, he leads me on the path of righteousness for his name's sake. In other words, when people see my life, they'll be able to praise the one who changed my life. When people see my life, they'll be able to praise the one who restored my life. When people see how I've changed, they'll be able to look at the God of change so that God can change their life. In other words, the glory of my restoration goes back to God's reputation. Y'all not talking back to me. My reputation, my restoration and your restoration is attached to God's reputation. And so what God does is he restores you and brings you back to your manufacturer setting. He gives you the peace that he gave you from the beginning. He gives you the beauty that he gave you from the beginning. He gives you the joy that he gave you from the beginning. He aligns your will with his will so that you don't find yourself following the adversary or the enemy where you're living a life of fear, because God, listen to this, Timothy said it this way, God never made us to have a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of sound mind. In other words, what God does is he restores us back to the manufacturer's settings for his glory. Y'all, that's verse 3. That's verse 3. That's verse 3. That's right there. And family, listen, I'm talking to the person right now because you're listening to me. You're saying, Pastor, I hear you, but I'm talking to the person right now who feels like they're in the garage of their life and they're feeling broke down and they're feeling dejected and they're feeling like they can never be restored. I'm talking to the person right now who may be in the junkyard of your life and people are passing you by, but because of all the things that has happened in your life, because of some of the things that you've even done to make these things happen in your life, you believe that you are worth less. But I'm talking to you to make you understand that in Christ's eyes, you are worth it. In other words, God, when he sees you, he doesn't see you as trash, but he sees you as treasure. He doesn't see you as less than, but he sees you as more than. He doesn't see you as something to throw away. No, he sees you as someone to restore. He's not just capable of restoration. No, he's ready and willing to restore. Because when God restores your life, when God restores my life, when he shaves off all of the evidence and all of the consequences of sin, when God brings you back to the form that he made you, gets you back to the place where you can trust in him again, folks gonna look at you and say, man, God is a good God. Because you and I know we can't bring ourselves back to manufacturing settings on our. That's it. David says, Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Listen to this. Makes me to lie down in green pastures. It leads me beside still or quiet waters. He restores my soul. He restores me, and he leads me on the path of righteousness for his name's sake. I want somebody to hear me. You are a child of God. No. Listen to me closely. You are a child of God. You are not defined by what you've been through. You are not defined by your mistakes. You are not defined by all the hell that has happened in your life. You are not defined by what people say you are. You are a child of God. And I know when you look in the mirror, you may see the scars. When you look in the mirror, you may see the dirt. When you look in the mirror, you may see the trauma and the drama. But I need you to know that when God looks at you, he looks at you like a restoration project. He says everyone else never saw your value, but I'm your God, and I know your value. I need you to understand that God, listen to this, he's not the retail manager. Oh, he is the manufacturer. So for the person who's saying, Pastor, how in the world can God see my true value? He can see it because he made it. He can see it because he is the manufacturer. And because he's the manufacturer, he wants you to know you are not your mistakes. You're his child. But if you would invite God into your life, let him work. Let him heal you. Let him talk to you. Let him soothe you. Let him hug you. Let him make you whole. Let him restore you. If you allow God to be in your life right now, you'll be able to see what he's seen all along. Beauty from ashes.